Welcome back, crime sceners. Today we are talking about Craig, the pantyhose again, and the DNA that everyone was arguing about in the last video. As usual, there is the disclaimer if you want to have a quick read of that. And don't forget to like, subscribe and share because we need as many eyes on this as possible. And you never know, the next person who may be watching this could hold the key to solving the whole thing. Okay, so Craig Ellis, eldest son of Nanette Ellis, and a man who many think murdered his mother. However, there are a lot of people who don't believe that he murdered her at all, and he has a lot of supporters out there, and they're usually writing to me saying, why does Craig keep coming up in these videos? Why do you keep talking about him? So I just wanted to just use the start of this video to just put it out there once and for all about why Craig keeps coming up in these videos. And it's not because I think he's a murderer, because with everything that we've learned and all the information that we actually have obtained over these years, there's just not enough evidence to say that Craig is the one who did it. So I'm not sitting here thinking that he did it. I'm not sitting here thinking anyone did it. I just don't have enough evidence to say that anybody did it. But there is a reason why we talk about Craig so much. And that includes the fact that he was Nanette's son. He was one of the closest people to her. So of course he's going to come up. He was the last person to be at the house the day before she came home and was murdered. He lived in the house and in the bedroom right next to hers where the murder began. You know, almost everyone I speak to thinks that he did it. And he has done some really sus stuff, like driving away that day instead of being with his traumatized brother, and going back into the house and stepping over his mother's blood and leaving her to come home to an empty house when he knew everyone was fearful of something happening to her. So this is all kind of, a little bit strange. So, of course he is going to be one of the main topics of conversation. That's just an unfortunate side effect of discussing this case at all. I think I have tried to give Craig the benefit of the doubt with a lot of the things that he's done. Like every time he's done something that's been a bit strange, I do try to come up with other reasons why he may have done what he did. I know that not everyone reacts the same way when something traumatic occurs. I would even put myself in the same category. I don't think that sometimes I react to things the way that other people would. This is why I said in the past that he could be a narcissist or he could be on the autism spectrum. Not to diminish Craig in any way, but to say, hey, maybe there's another reason he behaved that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that he killed his mother because he did that certain thing. And like I just said, he just might grieve in a different way. He might react to trauma in a different way. And there's no right or wrong way to react to trauma or bad things that happen. I feel like I have always tried to see both sides or come up with alternative options to certain situations that might look bad. And if that hasn't come across like that, then I do apologize. It's not my intention to accuse anyone because I just don't know. That's why I put the disclaimer on every video, because it's just speculation, as I've said many times. But I put the information out there in the hope that it will trigger a memory in someone and we can get more information and hopefully get this case solved. I know there's at least one person out there right now who's listening to this and still not getting it and still thinking I'm accusing Craig. And I can say it until I'm blue in the face, but they won't get where I'm coming from. But I really don't care because I'm not here for you. I'm here for Nanette. So you can believe Craig didn't do it and you can comment on that, and you can believe Craig did do it and you can comment on that too. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Myself, like I said, I don't have an opinion yet. I'm trying to look at all the information we have and piece it together and hopefully solve the puzzle. I don't think it was a stranger. With everything we know, I just don't think it was a stranger. But I'm not even 100% on that. If it turns out tomorrow that it was someone totally unknown to Nanette, I will be quite shocked. I do have opinions, but they are all who I think didn't kill Nanette, not who I think did. Unfortunately, because of Craig's vicinity to Nanette and their relationship and the fact he lived in the house where she was murdered, he is going to come up in these videos. And if he didn't do it, then I am truly sorry about that. I can see how that would be terrible for an innocent person who has lost a loved one. But if it turns out that he did do it, I won't be a bit sorry. And maybe instead of accusing me of stuff in the comments, you can actually add some information that might actually help this case. That's the whole point of this channel. But Craig, if you are listening, I'm sorry your name keeps popping up, but I hope you understand why. I want justice for your family. And it's hard to put out the information, but also tiptoe around everyone's feelings. And if you didn't do this, I am truly sorry for everything that's happened to you. And I do have videos coming up that look at other people as well. So stay tuned for that. There are other people that also look a bit strange. And I just haven't had the time to do as many videos as I want, which is another reason why it always looks like it's all about Craig. It's just because the ones I've done so far have kind of been, around his vicinity, but there are other people that I will be doing videos about in the future who've got absolutely nothing to do with Craig. So that should make the Craig supporters very happy. And for those who say that I don't have compassion for the families of the victims, I mean, do you really think that the police act like that? Do you think that police rock up to a crime scene and burst into tears and say, but what about the family? No, they put their emotions aside and they try to work on getting it solved. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put my emotions aside, but I'm still trying to tiptoe around people's feelings as well, and it's really difficult, right? So, it doesn't mean that I'm cold and heartless. It just means that I'm trying to get the job done. Anyway, we'll get on to the DNA, which caused a bit of conversation in the comments on the last video. It would actually be good to find out how the boys were ruled out. When I say boys, in case you haven't been following along, we're talking about Nanette, Ellis's sons, Craig and Greg. Now, we know Max was ruled out by DNA, but we only know that because Craig said it. There's been no other confirmation at all that even happened. So we only have the one person saying that this happened at the moment. The detective who worked on the case, Kyle Simpson, he wouldn't say. He did say they had been ruled out, but when I asked how, he wouldn't tell me. I don't know why you wouldn't just say they have been ruled out by DNA, but he refused to tell me if they even had DNA. And before you go rushing to the keyboard, I am aware that the police don't have to tell me anything. That's okay. It's just made me wonder if they were ruled out by alibis instead. One thing to remember is that Craig doesn't have to give them his DNA. I can almost guarantee that they did not take swabs from the boys at the time of the murder in 1984. I said in a previous video, that DNA was in its infancy at the time, and someone commented that it was not available here in 1984, and that is actually right. When I was talking about it being in its infancy, I meant worldwide, even though I didn't say it. I meant worldwide. It didn't get to Australia to, I think, late 80s, but don't quote me on that because I just didn't look that up. But I think it was late 80s that it started being used in Australia. So 1984, I doubt the police would have even known what it was. Therefore, they would not have taken swabs for DNA, would they? They would have had absolutely no reason to swab anyone at the time of Nanette's murder. That means if they have been ruled out by DNA, they would have had to give that DNA to the police at a much later date. They don't have any evidence that the boys did anything wrong, so they wouldn't have been able to compel them to give them their DNA either. It would have to have been voluntary. If they were ruled out by DNA and Craig had voluntarily given them his DNA, it is weird that he didn't mention it in the podcast, and it would also mean that it was years later. Like, just for shits and giggles, let's pretend they gave their DNA and they were ruled out, and this was in 2010. Now, I'm using 2010 as a pretend date because Max died in 2013, so he was obviously ruled out before 2013, unless they took his DNA from him after he died. And I don't mean that they dug up his body, but maybe grabbed a swab while he was in the morgue. But either way, it would definitely have been 2013 or earlier. So we'll pretend it was 2010 that both boys were ruled out by DNA. Well, how were they ruled out before? How were they ruled out between 1984 and 2010, or whatever year they were actually DNA tested? It had to have been through alibis. Greg obviously had the neighbours as alibis, and Craig would have used his friends as an alibi. And I don't know about you, but alibis don't mean anything to me. I have seen too many cases where the wife or a family member was an alibi, and years later they've gotten a divorce or they've fallen out and they run straight to the police station and say, hey, remember that alibi I gave you 20 years ago? It was all garbage. So I don't place much meaning in an alibi. There's only two reasons I will believe an alibi, and that is, one, if you were with me when a crime was committed, and I know that you were with me, then I will definitely believe that alibi. And two, if you were a baby the year it was committed, then those are the only two reasons I will believe an alibi. So what is my point here anyway? My point being is that I'm a little concerned about the fact that, we don't know if Craig and Greg have been ruled out by DNA, like some people have been saying. They were saying, well, if his father's been ruled out, then they've probably been ruled out too. And that just isn't true. Just because Max was ruled out doesn't mean the boys have been ruled out at all. For the sheer fact that they wouldn't have ruled them out early on, like when the murder actually happened, because it just didn't exist then. And also too, because the police don't have enough evidence against them to actually compel them to give DNA. So any DNA giving would have had to be voluntary. And we don't know if they did volunteer it. And since there was some disagreement about how DNA works in the comments of the last video, I've done a little bit of research, and this is what I found. And I hope it makes sense, and I hope it is actually right, because I don't really get it. I'm not a sciencey person. But I did find out that if they DNA tested Max and it was negative, this does not mean that Craig and Greg can be ruled out. They have to be individually tested. Labs test autosomal DNA. I hope I'm saying that right. Autosomal DNA. That is the standard test, and they match up 20 to 24 STR markers. Now, father and son share about 50% of the autosomal DNA, and the other 50% comes from the mother, which means the son has 50% of autosomal DNA that the father doesn't have. So the son could match the crime scene DNA even if the father does not. There is Y DNA, which apparently is passed down almost unchanged to their sons, from fathers to sons. So if Max's Y DNA was tested against the crime scene DNA and it was negative, then that would actually rule out both Craig and Greg, because he only tests for the Y chromosomes. But apparently they don't use it very often, and if they do, they still have to do an actual standard DNA test to confirm that it's them or not them. Now, GED testing, which was also mentioned in the comments, that looks at single nucleotide polymorphisms, whatever they are, to find relatives. Like, once again, if you found a cousin or an uncle or an aunt of the murderer, you would still need the murderer's DNA to confirm it. It's not often used in Australia, so I doubt the police have used it. I doubt they've used the Y DNA testing either. I don't even trust that they still have the DNA. They contaminated the DNA in Margaret Tapp's case, and she was murdered only 6 months after Nanette, and just around the corner from her as well. And I'm listening to this new podcast about Christopher Wilder, and they think he did the Wanda Beach murders, and they actually had DNA from that crime scene, but the police can't find it. They could have just tested it against Wilder, and we would know for sure if it actually was him, and the Wanda Beach murders would be solved. It would be closed. It would be done. But the police have lost it. I'm not even sure how this happens. I mean, how hard is it to just store stuff correctly, especially something that's so important? I mean, we're not talking about mayonnaise here. We're talking about DNA from a crime scene. I mean, how do you stuff that up? I don't know. But that's what I found out about DNA. And if you're an expert and you think that's wrong, let me know in the comments or email me, because I am not an expert, obviously. And also the pantyhose. Lastly, the pantyhose. I know we've talked about it so many times before, but colour me mind blown, because we've talked a lot about the pantyhose, and if Nanette was planning on wearing them that night and why she would put the packet down on the bedside table in that back bedroom. And we've pretty much come to the conclusion that the packet was empty. Talked about that too. And in one of the later videos, I wondered if the person in that back bedroom was wearing them. But someone wrote to me and said, do you think they were wearing them on their head? And I was like, why didn't I ever think about that? I mean, why did I not think about people using pantyhose to disguise themselves, like in bank robberies? That, in my opinion, is a valid assumption. But what do you think? Do you think the killer was in the house and used those pantyhose to disguise their features? I did also think of something else about the pantyhose too. Now, I'm not a mechanic by any means, and I don't know what the parts of a car are called, but I have this vague memory of my husband using pantyhose for something in the car. Like he took my pantyhose and he put them across a part of the engine that was open and he was covering it with the pantyhose. I hope this is making sense. I hope you can kind of look in your mind and see what I might be talking about. It was like an open part of the engine and he used the pantyhose to cover it up. And I also remember someone saying that pantyhose make a great makeshift fan belt. If your fan belt breaks and you're stuck somewhere and you can't get a new fan belt, you can use pantyhose as a fan belt. So my point, which I can't even believe I didn't think before someone actually wrote to me and told me about this, is that maybe those pantyhose weren't being worn at all. At least not in the way you would usually wear them. Anyway, that's it for today. The 42nd anniversary is coming up on the 10th of this month. The anniversary always makes me really mad because it's been way too long and everyone is dying. I don't believe that this person hasn't confided in someone, or at the very least there is someone out there who has a pretty good hunch that a person they know did it. And if you don't come forward, shame on you. This person needs to be held accountable. If you think you know who did it, email me. The address is in the description. Don't let harbouring a murderer's secrets be your legacy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.